All right. Welcome back to All Cars, y'all. I am John, and it is time for another Motor Week retro review reaction. And this week it is the 1998 Lexus GS400. Now, I have done reaction videos to the one generation of the ES, one generation of the LS, and this is actually one of my favorite Lexus models. It's not perfect, of course, but felt it was time to finally do it. I've been waiting for this one for a long time, so I'm pretty excited about it to see what Motorweek said about it when it was brand new. So as always, grab your beverage of choice, a little bit of leftover caffeinated today, get comfortable in your chair, and let's take a trip down memory lane to about 1998.
Ever since Lexus first set out to conquer the luxury car market, it has carefully cultivated an image of high quality and refinement. And to that end, they've been extremely successful. But with the ultra-quiet cabins and silky smooth highway manners, some would argue the ride is so refined it excludes the driver from the experience. The same cannot be said, however, of the all-new GS400. This barnstorming performance sedan definitely has some very un-Lexus-like performance characteristics and is designed to keep the driver included. And with performance leapfrogging to the top of the priority list, it was back to the drawing board for Lexus engineers, who created in the completely redesigned 1998 Lexus GS400 a performance sedan intended to give its Autobahn rivals a run for their money. And at first glance, their intentions are quite clear. While maintaining a basic identifying shape, some subtle and not so subtle styling cues give the GS400 a more aggressive appearance. The large triangular headlights with integrated turning lamps wrap the front corners, giving the front a sleek, built-for-speed look, while separate high beam lamps flank the understated yet classy grille. Overall length has become understated as well, as the all-new platform has been shortened by 6 inches. Lengthy front and rear overhangs have been reduced, resulting in a more taut and muscular profile. At the back, the inboard-outboard light arrangement that began up front is continued, as large tail lamps wrap around the rear quarters, with separate brake lights set just inside the trunk lid. When added together, the 98 GS400 is far more appealing than its predecessor and is a cleaner effort than the Lexus HPS show car we saw last January.
Okay, before they move on, let's talk about this. I really like this car, and I think it's pretty underappreciated. And I want to go back to what they said at the very beginning there. And if we think back about, from the 80s and into the 90s and into the 2000s, there's a general narrative of constantly chasing the Germans, and specifically BMW and Mercedes, but the need to be sporty. And I've talked a lot about Cadillac on this channel, and that Cadillac needed to move away from the bigger cars, the comfortable, softer riding cars. But isn't that exactly, by what they said there, isn't that exactly where Lexus started, of a quiet, comfortable, isolated car, and then they needed to move more sporty, but Lexus achieved success with that isolated comfort. And here, it's sporty, but it's adding sportiness to the comfort, I think. I just think that the constant chasing sportiness for the sake of sport, right, is just misguided. But Lexus comes out with this, and I've always been a fan. Like I said, I think it's underappreciated, and that it's not beautiful. It's really good. It's a really, really good car. And I will say up front that at this time, it was one of my top choices in that kind of mid-level, mid-sized premium luxury brand, right? I liked this car a lot. It's the details that kind of fall apart for me. Now, first off, I like that this car is thick, especially at the rear. This rear C pillar right here, and the trunk is high, but you still end up with this really large rear window. There's a touch of Mercedes E in the way they round from the trunk down. A lot of touches of other things here, but basically what you've got is a car that looks chunky, so sort of a presence without being fat or bubulous. What I don't love about it is at the front, those headlights. I think they did a good job not making those look globulous, right? But then the inset lights closer to the grille, I've always hated that. I just don't like it. They look like afterthoughts. And at the rear, the same thing. You've got these triangular tail lights, and then they set some other ones into the trunk. The whole thing comes across like an afterthought that they didn't know what to do exactly, and they just kind of stuck this stuff in there. And generally, that gives this whole car a not as premium look to my eyes as, say, the E-Class or the 5 Series. It doesn't look quite as holistic, and it looks a lot like the same kind of problem that afflicted Infiniti, of having cars that look like they were designed for another market, designed for the Japanese market, and then just brought here to America. It looks good. I'm a fan. I like it. It was one of my top choices, but it's absolutely not the best looking kind of in its class. Let's see what else they say.
And a very low 0.29 drag coefficient bears this out. Not that the new V8 needs much help from a slippery body design. For the GS400, the LS400's 4-liter 32-valve dual overhead cam power plant has been reworked to kick out 300 horses and 310 pound-feet of torque, 80% of it available at only 1,800 RPM. New cylinder heads feature continuous variable valve timing with intelligence, a first for a production V8. The GS300's 225 horsepower 3-liter inline 6 also gets the VVTi treatment. Power is transferred to the rear wheels through a smooth as glass 5-speed automatic transmission that slingshots the GS400 to 60 in just 6 seconds flat. And that's no fluke. This is one quick Lexus. While a redesigned and more compact multi-link rear suspension, along with a 32% stiffer unibody and 17-inch wheels, equip the GS400 to dice it up on even the twistiest roads. And unless disabled, the competent vehicle skid control system is at the ready should driver exuberance get out of hand. But although the performance numbers may be a little unsettling to its competitors, the luxurious cabin has the opposite effect on the driver.
Before they get to the cabin there, I've got no problems with this. It's always frustrating to me that Motorweek doesn't bring out competitors' numbers at the same time, right? They're just reviewing this one car. A quick side note of here's what the 5 Series does, or here's what the E-Class does, or here's what Jaguar engines do would be appreciated. But nobody, I think, could really have a problem with this engine. It's from the LS down, 300 horsepower, 310 to 80% of torque at 1,800. That's super impressive. Have no problem with this engine at all. Uber smooth, very reliable engine. They've just made improvements to all along the way through a rear drive chassis. I mean, they've checked all the boxes, haven't they, on what they needed to do to compete against the best. Personally, because if you've ever watched the channel, you would know I probably would have gotten the 6-cylinder just because, hey, I don't need to go that fast, I guess. But no problems with this powertrain or 6 seconds, 0 to 60. Pretty impressive.
As the substantially roomier interior, it's 4.6 cubic feet larger than last year, comes with all the amenities that one expects from a Lexus. The GS400 has loads of leather and wood accents throughout. The sporty hide-covered 3-spoke steering wheel is now smaller due to a more compact, depowered second-generation airbag that resides there and on the passenger side as well. The dash features a new 3-pod instrument cluster with silver-blue Optitron backlighting, a system that keeps the gauges consistently illuminated regardless of exterior lighting conditions. Both driver and passenger enjoy 10-way power-adjustable seats with integrated side impact airbags. As expected, the GS400 center console is the epitome of ergonomic efficiency. Premium stereo and climate control switchgear is close at hand and self-explanatory. So too is the optional navigation system with voice prompting, and it incorporates the climate and stereo controls it has displaced and operates them by touchscreen. The wood-handled shift lever offers a choice of automatic or manual modes. In manual, the E-shift feature is activated and allows up and down shifts by simply pressing the buttons on the front and back of the steering wheel. In back, those along for the ride will appreciate the wide door openings as well as the generous leg, hip, and shoulder room. There's a big trunk as well. Thanks to the compact rear suspension and the relocation of the fuel tank, trunk capacity has grown 14% to 14.8 cubic feet. Pricing is not excessive.
Before they go to pricing, let's talk about that interior real quick. And what an interesting evolution for Lexus on the interiors. I'm going to start kind of backwards here real quick because that trunk looked bigger than 14.8, I think it was, cubic feet there. That looked ginormous. I appreciate that. I am a sucker for a big trunk. You know, the seats look super, super comfortable, especially the rear. They just look, gosh, they look like a place to spend some time. And I appreciate that the door panels themselves actually looked stylish, I guess is the word I'm looking for. You know, they've got a little bit of leather there. They've got a little touch of wood. The handle's just a little delicate. Those looked nice. They didn't scream at you, right? They didn't scream, look at me, luxury, but they just refined. The dashboard and everything else kind of giveth and taketh away to my eyes. So, you know, purely opinion here. I don't like gauges individually set deep in their own little pods. That's more what I expect to see in a Mustang or a Camaro or a, you know, old Pontiac than something in a luxury car. So the gauges were fine, but I just don't like that layout. And then the same thing with that gated shifter down below. I absolutely hate those. I seem to remember saying the same thing in a Jaguar reaction I did too. I just hate gated shifters. And overall, the interior looks high quality, and it was astonishing to look at how tight the joints were in the dash and all the individual pieces. The level of workmanship there was astonishing. The ergonomics looked just fine. So there's been a big step up. They added some wood. They did some other things. They're leaning a little more into the sporty by making the dash look sporty, the instruments look sporty. But I still will criticize. Oh, and I will give them a positive here of using two-tone, of having like that tan below and then a darker shade up above. I love that. I've got it in my car. I love that. But still the dash comes across, I don't know how to word it. It's perfectly functional. It's perfectly fine. But it still comes across more like we took a Corolla and moved the dash up than really looked at what Jaguar or others are doing and made the dash look rich. I imagine that if I looked side by side, not from memory, at a 5 Series, an E, and this, that would be fine. But overall, there just lacks a little richness in the details of the dash. But this, to me, was a huge step forward, especially if you think back to like the very first Infinity and just black dash everywhere. This is such a leap forward. It just doesn't scream wow to me, kind of in the dashboard up. I'm picking here, and I know I am.
Performance sedan of this caliber. The GS300 begins at $37,295, while the GS400 carries a base sticker of $45,295. Be aware, however, options can easily add $6,000 or more. No matter, our conclusions are clear. If Lexus pursues performance with the same relentless determination that made them a luxury benchmark, they could give the German machines more than a run for their money. It could be a run for their lives.
Huh. Interesting review. Very positive, and I appreciate that. I've always thought of this, and I seem to remember in reviews that this always did well enough, but never really challenged the leaders, and certainly not in sales. And I think that Lexus, I don't know how to put it. I think they kind of played it safe. You know, they wanted to compete with the Germans specifically. They wanted to add more sportiness to it. They needed a compelling luxury car that had their traditional virtues. But at the same time, they were trying to be distinctive. And unfortunately, that distinctiveness, at least in styling, doesn't quite work for me. And I felt the same way in like the ES, right? Like they just play it a little too conservative. For me, at this time, for my money, I loved this car. I really, really liked this car. And if you were looking at a 5 Series or an E-Class, for example, this would have been my top choice, probably. I would have wanted the name of Mercedes. I even maybe would have wanted the style of the 5 Series, although I love the E-Class. But this probably offered the luxury, reliability, value proposition best for me. But the style didn't really, really do it for me. It's not the car that I want to walk out to and be like, yeah, look at that. That's my car. It's more like, oh, well, it's got a nice personality. That's kind of my feeling about this car. I might do, not soon, but I might do, Motorweek has a later GS, which I think is really, really, really good looking. But this one sticks out at me for being such a solid attempt. And I felt like it was a couple of touches, exterior and maybe interior, away from really doing to the middle of the luxury market what the LS did the next level up. But this wasn't a home run. It was maybe a solid base hit, I guess. I don't know. Really stretching my baseball analogies here. But good car. I liked it. Would have loved to have owned one. And certainly from a reliability point of view, I would take it higher than any of the Germans. But it just ends up a little underappreciated because I just think Lexus played it a little too close to the vest. And they went with a styling direction that was more Japanese market than American. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, let me know what you think. If you owned one, let me know. Love to hear your experience with it. And stay tuned. Some point in the future, I'll do a later GS as well and tell you what I think. Thanks for being here, guys.